This week's episode of Trash Panned Off-Road, we're going to put a 2-inch spacer lift on my sister-in-law's Suzuki Sidekick. She ordered all the parts from Low Range Offroad, and so this is what you get in the spacer lift. Strut top spacers, rear spring spacers, front spring spacers. Those two may be backwards. Also comes with the drill bit so that you can drill out your old bolts and put these new bolts into your strut tops. So along with that, you're also recommended, you don't have to do it, but she's going to do it because it's the quote-unquote more correcter way to do it. Rear spacer, differential spacer goes on underneath the wishbone so as that your rear end will still be able to move like it should, as well as a set of camber bolts to help get that alignment back in. Neither of these are necessary. You can get away without it, but for safety's sake and just the ease of installation, she's going to go ahead and put these, I am going to go ahead and put these in for her to get that dialed in. Also, when you do a spacer lift, your factory shocks are too short, so we went ahead and picked up a set of Monroe shocks for a 2000 Crown Vic, and we're going to try to run those. We'll see if they're too soft or what they may be too hard. I'm running the Crown Vic. I'm running the Cavalier shocks in the Overland build, and they seem a little soft for me, so we may end up swapping them between rigs depending on how that rides. So now we're going to jack this thing up and take the wheels off and get started. Okay, real easy. Got the front strut out. Bolts here, take the front strut. What you got to do, put it in your vise and hammer these bolts out. Then use the supplied drill bit to widen those holes because it comes with new bolts for your spacer. You'll bolt your spacer on up here, just like so. Then you take the shorter of the two coil spacers, and all you have to do, come here, and I should be able, not you dog, step on this. Okay. If you got a buddy who can help you, you could step on that, and in theory you should be able to turn this spring enough to get it to come out. Yeah, there it is. See, there you go. So all we unhooked was your main strut, and we were able to pull that spring out. Now you take the shorter of the two springs, hammer it back on here, and then get your buddy to hold this down again, and you can put this spring back in, and then you just have to spin it so that your pigtail is back in that groove, and then you can bolt it all back together. Before you go to put your spring spacer on, make sure you clean this thing up. Believe it or not, this is blue under there. It was all black when we started, so cleaned it up. Also, you may notice the axle does come out of the differential when you get all this stuff pulled out like that. Not a big deal. You just got to, when you start putting it all back together, you just got to be aware of that to make sure you get that line back up again. And that's just going to take some hammering. Got to editing the spacer lift video we did on my brother's and sister-in-law's Suzuki Sidekick, and I realized as I was editing it, we missed a major part that we didn't tell anybody about, how we put this front end back together. It was like, ta-da, movie magic. Now we'll go to the other side. So I pulled in the Overland Geo Tracker, took the tire off. I want to show you guys here what we did in order to get it back together. So where we left off in that video, the axle is pulled out, the knuckle is dropped down, not connected. So you got to take and put your strut back in with your spacer lift on top. And once you get your strut back in, you put your spring back in as well. Again, somebody stands on this, gives you enough force to get your spring back in. That's what pulls the axle out. So you get your strut back in, get it bolted in with the bolts that it come with, and then take your jack and put it underneath the knuckle or the A-arm, and then you can do it on your own, but it's way more difficult that way. With we had two people, my brother was here. Basically one dude or one person runs the jack, and the other person gets in here nice and tight, You take the knuckle that's not attached yet, and you lift it up, push it with your body, you hold it in, and then you guide the axle shaft back into the diff. Once you get the axle shaft back in all the way, then you worry about either pulling this down or pushing it up or whatever you have to do to rearrange this in order to get the knuckle back into the strut. Then you put in your bolt and your camber bolt. Make sure you get your camber bolt position to push this thing back as far as you can. It's, I don't know, not quite a 1/4 inch. Then you bolt it all back together. I always leave my brake lines unhooked. Some guys hook them back in. I just leave mine unhooked. They say you should knock this tab off if you do that, but I don't know, knock on wood, I haven't had an issue yet. Mine just kind of dangle there. So that's how we get that put back together before we go over to the other side. I just wanted to make sure and get that put in the video because I noticed that we left it out. Got this side all buttoned up. We're going to go over and switch to the other side. We went ahead and put this camber bolt in. Basically what that does is it takes and forces this top section of this knuckle further back into the strut, which is going to compensate for the A-arm being forced down with that spacer. So now in theory we're going to have that tire going straight up and down. So that's why the camber bolts were purchased alongside of the kit as an extra add-on. I think they're about 20 bucks. But also, go ahead, we went and did all the pieces up here for the strut top spacer. So this side is now all done. We're going to button it up, put some teeny tiny tires on it so we can make fun of it, and then we'll do the other side, and then we'll back it up and switch it around to do the back side. So things are different here on the driver's side because this axle does not slide out of the differential. It's bolted up there. So you can pull the spring out, but you aren't getting it back in there unless you unbolt that. So we're going to have to unbolt the axle, and then we'll bolt it back up once we get everything put back together again. One of the other things we've done different from the directions is we've gone ahead and just cut these off and banged them out, that little section, rather than this whole bolt having to be ran out, because we're not going to use these bolts anyway. So we cut them and then knock the bottom out. Now onto the rears. This is why we brought the Crown Vic shocks, because the easiest way to do this, you have to unhook your shocks anyway, and the Crown Vics are going to be the right length to put in here. So once you unhook your shocks, it takes away all of the things that are holding it tight, because your shocks is your limiting straps once you get the 2-inch spacer lift in. So now it's just a matter of pushing down on this one here, stepping on it like we did the fronts, slide this out, slide the little spacer up here after you clean it, and then you put it all back together, easy peasy. The rears are, oh, there it goes. See how easy that was? Now we'll put the spacer on, and then we'll put the spring back in, jack up the rear end on this side, and put the shock back in. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. Once you unhook everything, and if you don't have a buddy to step on this, you just use the floor jack. You put the floor jack on the other side, lift it up, that'll flex everything down. You can put the spring and stuff in. Then you bring the floor jack over to this side, lift it back up, and then you could put your shock back in. So we'll put a couple more pumps on the jack to bring everything up, tighten up the shock, and then we'll go to the other side. Last piece of the install for the spacer lift section that we bought is the rear diff spacer. Puts a 2-inch spacer here so that your wishbone stays in alignment. So the only thing is, it's real easy. You just, this is not there. This actually bolts right to your diff. It's 4 bolts. Take those out. Put a jack underneath the diff so you can get the angle back again, so your pinion angle is correct. And then this is just push up by hand on the wishbone. Slide the spacer in. So take your supplied bolts that they give you, finger tighten them down the best you can, and then crank it down, and then you'll be all done. Okay, there it is. 2-inch spacer lift done. Put the stock tires back under it for now. We're going to run some 31s, but he needs 2 replacements, so I'm not sure which set of 31s we're going to put under it. But it will get these 31s eventually, because he wants to run mud terrain. It's going to be a trail rig. But I'll move this out of the way and show you guys what it looks like on the stock tires. Spacer lift's all done. Now we are going to start on putting the body lift on it. Put another 2 inches under that thing. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. It helps you out. If not, try some of the other videos. It's over 100 videos on the channel, and there's got to be something on there you like. So follow along on the Instagram, Trash Panda Offroad, and I'll see you guys next time.